Countries will realize that World War III has begun when missiles start raining down on their homeland, according to claims, of course. The White House relations with both China and Russia have been steadily swirling, and it appears the military could soon be forced to fight both at the same time. In Russia, regular television programs were interrupted by a message telling viewers to take their anti-radioactive pills and head to the nearest bomb shelters after hackers breached state television servers to broadcast chilling messages. Was it a security breach or was it a fluke exercise? It was definitely a drill before the reality of nukes, it appears. Television and radio programs in Moscow and the Sverdlovsk region, wherever that is, including the city of Yekaterinburg, where they were interrupted with the alarming message telling citizens that a missile strike had taken place on Russian soil. The population was told to take potassium iodine pills, wear gas masks to protect themselves and seek shelter. But the truth is, we're all going to need radiation pills if this madness does not stop. Both sides keep escalating things. Recently, the Russians hit Ukrainian cities with their biggest missile attack in weeks, and Ukraine's armed forces chief said Russia fired 81 missiles into Ukrainian territory, including 6 hypersonic Kinzhal missiles, which cannot be intercepted by its air force. And Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said the capital had experienced a series of explosions that damaged energy infrastructure and caused injuries. Now, in his most recent Telegram post, Klitschko said that due to the emergency power outages following the missile attack, 40% of the capital's consumers were now without heating, and Russia had not used hypersonic Kinzhal missiles since the first weeks of the war. And these missiles are absolutely devastating because they can fly at breathtaking speeds. Kinzhal, unveiled by Putin 5 years ago, can accelerate to Mach 4, which is 4 times the speed of sound. And they can reach speeds of up to Mach 10, with a range of about 1,250 miles. The missile is also believed to be nuclear, an even more sophisticated weapon. Russia's advanced avant-garde hypersonic glide vehicle can fly at speeds of up to Mach 27. Can you imagine that? Mach 27. 27 times the speed of sound, according to the Kremlin. Another hypersonic missile, the Zircon anti-ship missile, has also been developed, but there are no reports of the Zircon or avant-garde being used in combat. Even with all the help given to them, the Ukrainians are simply outmatched, and at this point, even Ukrainian news sources are openly acknowledging the reality of what has happened in places like Bakhmut. The Kiev Independent recently interviewed soldiers on the front lines and issued an unexpectedly blunt assessment that Ukrainian soldiers are largely unprepared, poorly trained battalions thrown into the front line of the mill meat to survive as best they could with minimal support from armored vehicles, mortars, artillery, drones, and tactical intelligence. If politicians on both sides and their families actually had to fight in these wars, they would end the war very quickly, obviously. Things could soon go to a whole new level, though. There's no doubt that the number of American troops in Poland has been covertly increased, and they're deploying many more weapons in that region. United States commanders and military observers are sounding the alarm over Russian submarine fleet activity thousands of miles off the U.S. coast. And throughout the war, which began when Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine last February, there's been a buildup of Russian naval forces in the Black Sea. There has also been a growing presence of Russian submarines in the Mediterranean, according to officials. Meanwhile, one of the top Chinese military officers has publicly stated that it is time to concentrate our efforts on preparations for war. Zhang Yuxia called on the People's Liberation Army to concentrate its efforts on preparations for war. They're talking about Taiwan, of course. If the Chinese did not intend to invade Taiwan, they would have no reason to prepare for war. But the truth is, they know they are going to invade, and they also know it will mean war with the United States. Of course, the US military is also rapidly preparing for such a conflict. The following is from a very interesting article in The Economist about US preparations for war with the Chinese. Marines are training for a war with China, possibly precipitated by an invasion of Taiwan. Their base in Okinawa, at the southern tip of the Japanese archipelago, is only 370 miles from Taiwan, and the two islands are part of what US military planners call the first island chain. It's a series of archipelago and islands, large and small, that stretch from Japan to Malaysia, blocking a naval passage from China to the Pacific, either by transporting Chinese ships from a distance or, much less likely, by deploying to Taiwan to help repel a Chinese landing. The Marines will be involved early in any conflict. Australia is preparing for nuclear war as well. In a barrage of publications by Australia's biggest newspaper, Nine Media, and its main columnists of the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, published a long series of papers insisting that Australia must prepare to fight an imminent war against China. The Red Alert, quote-unquote, called for the stationing of nuclear weapons and long-range missiles in northern Australia, the introduction of mass conscription, and preparations for the country to host up to 200,000 US troops in Australia. The publication emphasized that war will be fought in the Indo-Pacific, not in 20 years or a decade, but within the next period. The timeline shown in the Red Alert of a war with China in the near future comes directly from the US military. It's merely a promotion of views expressed by US Air Force General Mike Minihan, who earlier this year predicted a US war with China by the year 2025. The alleged cause of such a war promoted by Red Alert is identical to that proposed by Mike Minihan. The Chinese government was supposed to launch an invasion of Taiwan, forcing American intervention, and it would quickly escalate into an all-out war. The US has been conducting a massive military buildup across the Indo-Pacific since it introduced its pivot to Asia back in 2011. The Pentagon has outlined an air-sea battle plan for how an aggressive US war against China would be paid for. The Red Alert claims that such a war would immediately take place across the entire region. Australia would be involved from the outset, and within 72 hours of such a conflict, there would be Chinese attacks on Australia's cyber networks and critical infrastructure. The US Pine Gap Intelligence and Military Coordination Base in Central Australia would be a target, as would other Australian US facilities. And before this goes on, we'd like to make sure no one forgets the Middle East. War is coming there too, and it will be absolutely terrible. We know what's happening from all sides concerning Israel. So this is on Soul Ask. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.